Here we go. So today the question on reality coaching for writers is, how can a writer's coach help you increase your chances of landing a literary agent? Diana, welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers, where we offer
no fluff, just the real stuff you need to succeed.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that picture behind you, hanging on the wall behind you, and I think I recognize that as the edge of the beach right before you go out, and that's the shore break. And I'm looking at it going, that first little shore break is going to hit me about waist high, maybe chest high, knock me back, and then from then on, it's just going to be a fight to get out to the break. And that's kind of what writers face when they have to start finding a literary agent. They've written the book, or in my case, it would be a book as your surfboard. You've got your baggies, you're ready to go and get in the big water, but you got to get that agent. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how we can help. So you sat across the desk as a literary agent. So in one sense, you've seen all the wrong ways that clients. Why don't you share a little bit about some of the things you saw while you were an agent with Heartline all those years ago?
Well, the biggest thing in representing mostly inspirational fiction and nonfiction, so working with Christians, was the worst thing you can ever tell an agent is that God told me you're going to be my agent. You don't want to start out that way. So just put that to the side, even if you really feel God did tell you, and it turns out later that that person becomes your agent. I'd wait till you've established a healthy relationship before you even say anything about that. But yes, there are a lot of submissions that would come our way. It was evident right off the bat that they, first of all, were pretty clueless how the publishing industry worked. And then the adverse was equally true. It was very evident when we received a great proposal and it had everything that our submission guidelines asked a writer to bring to us. So I think the biggest mistake, number one mistake, is not consulting the submission guidelines, having a healthy understanding of what the industry is like.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going to get this right because I didn't even think to bring these notes with me. But last night in our Jesus study down at Moore Square, we're in John chapter 18, and it's the part where he's confronted by the guards, and they said, he said, who are you looking for? And they tell him Jesus of Nazareth. And the way it should read in Greek is he, comma, I am, right? He, I am, right? And that's the way the Greek translates his response. And so I'd done some digging. How many times did Jesus use the word I am in the New Testament? So I had that information. And we talked about that a little bit because I realized in reading those verses, and I know we're a little bit down a rabbit trail, but in reading the verses, Jesus introduces himself as I am the bread of life. And we began talking about that. And if you look at it, all those I ams of Jesus, he is basically dating us. He starts out on a date. He takes us out for a meal, right? And then later on, he introduces it as the light. And if you think about a date, a guy, if he's a gentleman, is going to put the woman on the inside of it, closer to the building and the light, and he's going to be the protection between her and the darkness of the street. And we talked a little bit about this. My point is, it's only until they late in that, like the third or fourth step in that he finally says, I am the truth, the way, right? Mm-hmm. That's when he comes down heavy with the theology and, hey, like I'm the guy, right? I'm the guy, right? To your point, too often I think we come at our agent because we're Christians and we want to say, this is it, I'm the guy. And I'm playing the Jesus or the God trump card,
Right.
And it doesn't work, even though we're all on the same page. It just doesn't work. That's a long way of saying it just doesn't work. So it's a kind of a too quick, too bold. Anyway, I don't know if that helped or not. But I was thinking about, I guess the reason I mentioned it was because we've talked about before about being at writers' conferences, that's kind of the dating process. it's sitting down and sharing a meal or a cup of coffee or something with somebody in a very informal, relaxed atmosphere, almost like you meet them on the sidewalk, and you and just for 10 seconds you introduce yourself and what do you have, and then you move on from there. So I guess that's my input on that, is don't come on
Yeah.
too strong. you know.
Right. Well, in answer to your question, how does a writer's coach increase your chances of approaching and getting a literary agent? Is we know, Eddie, you and I, we've been, like you said, I've sat on the other side of the desk. I've seen uh, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you also, had an agent, and so we understand. As a publisher, you understand how the industry works, so we can help stack the deck or help people check the boxes off of what an agent is looking for. So the primary thing that an agent is looking for, or I'm looking for, is for you to meet a felt need. That's one of the things. And I just was speaking to a client yesterday about their idea for a book and who their demographic was. Did they even understand their target audience? That's so key to know your audience, and is that audience looking for what you have to offer? What do
Yeah.
you think about that, Eddie?
Well, I'm gonna flip that question back to you in a different way,
Okay.
because I was coaching one of my clients recently on this, and he sent me his pitch to the agent. He's pitching for an agent. He just asked me to look through it, and I really came at it from the perspective: if I was an agent, how would I react to this, right? And that's kind
Mhm.
of the thing. So there are two. Actually, to me, I was thinking there are two needs. There's one for the audience that you're writing for, right? But there's the other audience, which is the agent. The agents need to make money, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. And so, I was thinking about this. Well, when you're pitching to an agent, you need to take into consideration their number one, they're a person. They need to make a living. They have a family. Their time is limited, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And if I'm trying to get somebody's attention, how am I going to come at that person first, just to get them to even read what I'm getting ready to say? Because they're not going to get to the second part of who my target audience is if they can't get past the first part. Um, so I think the need of the agent, I'm not saying it trumps your target audience, right? But I think you need to be aware when you're talking about submission guidelines for a literary house. I think it goes deeper than that. You need to know the submission guidelines and the personality of the agent, and know who they are. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, and that's a good point, because there were within our agency when we were um, at times we had 5 to 7 agents, but each of those agents were looking for specific genres. Their area of expertise lay in specific genres. Joyce Hart was our romance
Yeah.
agent. She loved to represent romance. She was very successful at it. She knew what would sell, and the publishers knew when something from Joyce related to a romance genre hit their desk, they were fairly certain there was a high percentage that they were going to like it and want to contract it, because that was her area of expertise. So one thing that our agency did not represent until Kyle Young came on board was children's books. We did not represent children's books. So a big mistake would have been to pitch us a children's book. I have written hundreds of emails replying to a children's book submission with the line, I regret to inform you that Heartline does not represent any children's titles. I wish you the best in, Diana. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have sent that email out. Another thing is we have never represented screenplays. And again, over and over again, we would receive submissions for screenplays. So it's very important to know what an agency represents and who within, like you said, that relationship that who do you want to connect to within that agency that actually represents, what you have to offer.
Yeah.
Eddie, just a funny comment is I tended to collect psychologists. At one point in time, I was representing 9 psychologists. And I sent out a quick little email to all the other agents and I said, hey, just curious, how many psychologists do you represent? And there was one that had one client that was a psychologist. And but he primarily wrote books on parenting. So it was so hilarious that I collected psychologists because that is an area that just fascinates me, intrigues me. So it's one of my key, likes. So when I would get a submission from one, I would salivate. And if they gave me a half decent proposal, I jumped on board with them.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point is you just use the word salivate. So even though the market might not have been great or the book might not have been great, you're going to look at it because it's something that appeals to you as an agent. And that's a little bit unfair on the landscape. I mean, I may have written a really good, I don't know, supernatural something or another, but if that's not your something that's really going to get you jazzed up, you're going to go to the psychologist thing first, even though it may not sell as many copies, just because it appeals to you. So that's kind of what we're talking about. You need to know these things,
Agents
and
are individuals, yes, with personal likes and dislikes.
right. And a good writer's coach can help you find that out. They can help you track that and do some of that legwork for you and help you swizzle your pitch. Speaking of pitches, how much time, what would be the length of a good length for an email to pitch to an agent? I mean, how much time are you going to spend reading an email that comes just over the transom in your inbox and you've got to sort through all this? What's a good word count, or how long are you going to spend reading an email for something like that?
I would say 200 words, 200 to 50, but even shorter can capture it. A good elevator pitch can capture, if I remember someone pitching to me, Forrest Gump meets Led Zeppelin. And it was hilarious because I was right away intrigued. How are they going to connect Forrest Gump with Led Zeppelin? But it was a retired rock star who had a Forrest Gump approach to philosophy to life, and right away I was intrigued. So if you can just capture something like that in your pitch, and then give a little paragraph about retired, rock star that had met with minimal success, finds his groove, blah, blah, blah. And then please find the attached proposal with sample chapters. I would go immediately to read the sample chapters.
So do you know, if you were coaching class, would you normally recommend that they include attachments with the email, or just the query, just a short query pitch email? What's your recommendation?
It depends. Agencies are different. I liked a proposal attached because I didn't want to take the time to have to answer their email, wait for a reply with their proposal. If they caught my attention, I would immediately go check their writing. Many, many people, unfortunately, had a great pitch, but failed in the writing category, So then I would often refer them to a writing coach or different resources, but ask them to come back.
How about if a client has already been published traditionally with another agency, and let's just say the agency went out of business or the agent retired or something like that. If they've got a book that's maybe somewhat successful, would you still encourage them to include the writing sample, or would you just say, if you're interested, please reply back and I'll send you, I'll send an attachment, a proposal?
That would be sufficient then. If they have a published, they've been published and been fairly successful in their sales, then yes, that's sufficient to send a query. save them time and, and then
Yeah.
I would follow up. Yes.
Yeah, I'm asking this. I know these seem like pretty granular questions that you and I are going to answer these questions with our clients, but I wanted to throw it out there because I know, some people get bogged down with all the the attachments on the server, the capacity on the server, and at some point you're starting to pay for the capacity on the server. So an attachment, the fewer attachments, the better, and all that kind of stuff. How about the marketing in that 200 word pitch that you're talking about? Yeah, it's not a lot of room for talking about your platform marketing and how you're going to, make this book a success. How do you fit that into a 200 word pitch?
Well, truthfully, when you prepare a proposal, you have what we call a 1-page or a sell sheet. And a query is just taking that out of your proposal, cutting and pasting it into your the body of the email. That suffices for a query. And so what that includes is your title, your word genre, and your word count. Word count is so important. We have to say it over and over again, but it's all about the word count. Because if you're writing a romance novel, they generally fall into a certain word count. Publishers produce, romance novels that are between 70 to 80, 90,000 words, some at 100,000, but you have to be pretty well published. So they can be 60 to say 80,000 words. But if you say right in your body of your query that your book is and I've received this 180,000 words.
Yeah.
Or some have even said 210,000 words. I right away know, that they kind of are clueless about what the industry standards are for their genre. And they obviously, well, there's a good indication that they don't know how to tighten their writing. And they might have a lot of extraneous words in their manuscript. But so how I would require a title, word count, genre, tagline, that little pitch, Forrest Gump meets Led Zeppelin, and then a tiny little section about the storyline, tiny storyline, and then short bio. And
Okay.
you could say in that bio, with marketing opportunities, and mention the networks that you are connected with. Then you will expand on that in your proposal. But it's
How about on non,
pretty.
how about on nonfiction? Because that's on fiction, but about nonfiction, if you're pitching a nonfiction book and you've got maybe one that was traditionally published before, and this is the second book, how would you pitch that in a short query letter, short email?
Well, you do the same, but you'd have a little publishing credits are. It's very important for nonfiction to place their publishing credits. You would say articles in Focus on the Family, Women's Day, Sports Illustrated. You'd mention the publications you've been published in, and you'd mention your book and your publishing company and the year it was published. Speaking engagements, those are all lures to an agent. And I would say get them into that query.
Okay.
Because for an agent to sell a nonfiction book, a platform is required. And the definition of a platform is your particular means to sell your book to others. So that means I not only have friends and relatives that are wanting my book. I mean, we're going to beg, borrow, and barter and do everything we can to get a book to our friends and relatives, right? Have them buy one. But we are also going to say, my 20,000 bloggers, my podcast with 52,000 subscribers, those are all things that get an agent very excited. So if you pitch them a genre that they're interested in, and you have laid a foundation of a decent platform, then they get excited about that. So yeah, definitely put that in the query.
Yeah, I was thinking about that platform thing when I was coaching my client, because I don't even remember why this came to mind, but I was thinking about poor Gideon, who was going off to fight. I don't know, I forgot who he was going to fight, but he had, I think it was 32,000 men. And the Lord said, well, you got way too many. You got to cut that back. And, he wound up paring it down. He got rid of 99% of his army and was left with 300 guys. He left from 33,000. So he only had 1%. And I was thinking, yeah, that's about the way it works if you're a pastor of a mega church. About 1% of your congregation is going to buy your book, and the other 99%. I'm not saying that's true, but it's from the publisher's perspective and the agent's perspective. That's the doomsday look at a large platform of a mega church pastor. It's like, yeah, I'm just not sure all those people are going to buy the pastor's book. They hear him every Sunday for free. Why do they want to buy his book? So. I guess I'll throw that out there, because this is, you hate to say that it's a cynical business, but for the most part, I would guess much of what you contracted and the clients you took on didn't live up to the expectations that you expected. Is that correct?
That's right. The percentage of people I succeeded in reaching publication was a lot lower than my number of clients. And we within the industry, agents would talk among ourselves. We wished we had that crystal ball, because we would talk to one another and share our disappointing stories, our wins, of course, and encourage one another. But it was definitely I thought of a way to say it, but it might not be approved by most of our listeners if I said it that way. But yes, it's the odds are more difficult than ever before, but there's always a God story in a way that God does it. I mean, Eddie, I remember when I was representing you, we tried several different titles, but then we found success with your middle reader titles with Zondervan, so I mean, you knock on doors, you try, but you adjust. And that's the biggest thing I think as writers coaches, we can help our clients understand is you've got to be willing to make adjustments and shift your emphasis. And this book that you first begin with might not be the one that gets you started in publishing. It can often be your second or your third book. It is a journey. It's not a sprint. But if you feel called to write, be obedient to that call, write, and shake the bushes and approach agents and bring what you've written to them in the hope that your call will be fulfilled and you will hold your book in your hands. It's I don't want to throw cold water on anybody, but that's why you and I called our coaching business reality coaching for writers. We want people to understand that there are times you have to lay that one book aside and go with the next one.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking the phrase I keep when you were talking that came to mind is that axiom: hope springs eternal. Hope springs eternal. It doesn't mean that success and sales spring eternal, but hope's always, it keeps coming back. And when you were talking about the book and everything we've done as an author and the agent and everything to put into a book to get it out there, and then you don't know whether it's going to succeed or not, and you have to be able to adjust. When you were saying that, Diana, I was thinking about, almost in a sports analogy, that a coach and a team prepares prepares their team to go on the field and win, right? But they have no experience at all with the adversary, the other team that they're getting ready to play. They have no game film. They don't know who the players are really, and they don't know what the field conditions are going to be. So they come charging out of the locker room with this expectation of this is how we're going to play this game. And 3 drives into the game, they're completely lost. They have no idea, how they're going to beat this team that is suddenly a whole lot bigger, a whole lot faster, and they're running plays that we've never seen before and couldn't even imagine. And now we've got, 40, 35 more minutes of this, before we finally get to go back into the locker room and say, I quit. In the meantime, everybody's booing us. That's kind of what publishing is, and for the writer's career, like you said, you better be able to adjust, because if you can't adjust, if you keep trying to run the same thing and it's not working,
Right.
you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna make it to halftime. They're gonna cart you out on a stretcher, take you to the hospital, get you an MRI. To your point, you and I did do a lot of brainstorming. Now, when you were talking earlier about Joyce, God bless her, she was my first agent, and she and I came to a happy agreement. She was like, I cannot figure out how to sell what you write, Eddie. And I can sell, and what she was really saying is that I can sell almost anything, but I can't figure out how to sell what you're writing. So that's when you and I hooked up, because you are, or you were, the Hope Springs Eternal agent. Was always my recommendation for you. I said, if you can get it to Diana, she'll always believe in you. She'll always believe in the story.
Yes, and that's the thing. You want to make a good connection with an agent, the right personality, because it often, it can take between 1 to 3 years to actually sell a book for a client, and part of it is because when it first comes to us and we start sending it out and the rejections come in, adjustments have to be made. And either that manuscript needs to be reworked and reworded and then presented again, or you lay aside. But I was thinking, Eddie, now it might have gone, but platform building for nonfiction writers. One of the best ways is to write articles, because you come at nonfiction writing usually from an area of expertise. Either you have a degree, you're a psychologist or doctor, or you have had life experience that has really taught you something. And so you're coming at what you're writing with some expertise. And while you're waiting for your book to find a publisher, while you're waiting for an agent to come back and say they want you, you have the opportunity to write articles and blog posts and write for Inspire Fire. And you build your platform by writing. And it's just smaller increments and offering nuggets of the truth you have.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing that comes into play here, again, as a writer's coach, helping somebody either land a literary agent, or once they've got an agent, being a sounding board for the author, because this from experience is that sometimes authors treat their agents as if the agent is their counselor, their therapist, and that may be a role that you can do, but it's not really what they're paying. They're not paying you for that, and that can be kind of a risk, because next thing you know, the agent's going, I got to get rid of the client because I can't spend that much time dealing with all the drama that Eddie's bringing to me. And this is kind of where a writer's coach can also come in, because we can be that in between sounding board of how often should I contact my agent and talk to him or her about the pitch. And I was thinking about that because we are almost into the first week of December, and we're almost at the end of the year, right? Let's just say we're, and one of the things that you and I would be good at right now, if our clients came and asked us, is, if the client says, well, I've got the book finished, we've edited it with your help, and we're all that, and we're ready to pitch it to my agent, to an agent, or, can we get on board? Can we do this now? And of course, my response would be, not right now. You don't want to send anything to an agent right now, because, and tell me if I'm wrong, really from an agent standpoint, you only had about 5 weeks a year, which was downtime. And that was the end of November into the first week in January, because that's the only built-in when the industry kind of slows down and stops. You get into that second week in December when Christmas shopping is pretty much beginning to wind down. But from now to Christmas is your family time. It's the only
Right.
time that really that agents have any time to spend with their family. And it may be that they want to be agenting, but if they've got a family, they're going to be pulled really hard into the family. If they can't make time for their family at Christmas, they're not going to be making time for family at all. They're not going to have a family.
Right. Yeah.
And then once you get into January, about the second week of January, the conference season is beginning to ramp up. It hasn't begun yet, but the invitations are out. The preparation is going into it. If you're an agent and having to go to a conference, you're beginning to prepare your workshops and everything else that's going to go with that. And so you're back in work mode in January. So this really is the only time of the year. And that's the reason I'm bringing all this up, is that's part of what a writer's coach should be able to do, is to
Right.
go to,
Right.
you got a great pitch, great book, great project, all that. This is just the wrong time to send it out. Don't send
Right.
it out right. And the other
Right.
time is kind of built in is 4th of July week. Just give them a break. Just, let
Yeah.
them have the 4th of July off, and then come back and hit them hard in August. August, they'll begin to start thinking of, new clients. These are the things that a good coach should be able to be a sounding
Yeah.
board. But I'd love to get your perspective on that as an agent, as whether any of this makes sense or not.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Eddie, you and I were talking about one of my clients that wanted to hurry up and get his book into print by Christmas. And you advised him to wait, or you advised me to tell him to wait, because launching a book right before Christmas, right with a 2023 time date on it,
Yeah.
would be then in January an old book. Even though it was just a month old or weeks old, it still would be known as a 2023 book. So that is not the time that you want your book to go into publication. And even publishers, they have 4 seasons that they publish: spring, summer, winter, fall. But there are no books coming out in just weeks before Christmas. They are already geared up with their marketing of all their books for the year in the month of December and middle of November. So, but I do want to tell you, as an agent, it was the time that we pitched to what we had to publishers, because they have a budget for the year. And every once in a while, they wanted to spend their money before the year closed. So there was a little bit of a buying spree, but that was November, the middle to end of November. If we did not hear a response or get a yes, we want this by that time, we knew we would just put it aside. I wouldn't nudge that publisher until mid-January with a little note. Hey, I put something on your desk now that the holidays are over. Have you had a chance to take a look at it? So you're right, Eddie. There are key times and key times not to leave your agent alone, and just give them a rest. And even when you have one, it's very nice when you just say, hey, beginning of December, have a wonderful holiday season. What do you want me to work on and get back to you in January with? That kind of thing. Because sadly, it's funny, because I wanted a break for Thanksgiving, but my clients were writing because they had time off from work. So they had free time to write. So they had questions for me when I want time off.
Yeah,
So
that makes
you
sense.
you just have to work that out, and you have to kindly say, I'm going to spend some time with friends and family. I'll get back to you the beginning of the week after, and just work those things out.
Yeah, so I think I'll close with this because we are talking about the holiday season coming up and we're talking about agents. And I'll just say, as far as respecting time, and I know I never did this with you like I should have, but if you've got an agent, or if you're considering an agent, if you've got a relationship with an agent that's not your agent yet, but you've met this person at a conference and y'all hit together, but maybe it didn't work. That one project didn't work. You got the relationship. Send them candy. Send them a gift card for candy. Send them something with a little handwritten note or an email, but either way, just to let them know that you're thinking of and you want nothing in return. It's just thank you for spending some time with me at the conference 3 years ago. I haven't forgotten it. I still count you as a valuable asset and resource in the industry, even though you may not be my agent. I still consider you somebody really smart. And I value your opinion. Just that little bit right there will keep your name in front of the person. And even if they're not the right fit, to your point, they may not be the right fit for you and that agency. They're going to remember you. And kindness goes so far in this business. It just does. And that's part of what we're talking about. This is why we're here, is for those small things. What's your closing comment, Diana?
Yes, those that have responded, just like you said, Eddie, with gratefulness and told me how thankful they were. We have maintained our relationships, and what's really sweet, and something I suggest you keep in mind though, is everybody's always changing desks. I mean, that agent might not be the right agent for you now, but they might be 2 years from now. And that agent might become a editor at a publishing house and might end up being the one to say yes or no to your manuscript. So we always say, don't ever burn a bridge in this industry, because you never know what network connections these people with their great knowledge are going to be able to bring to you even years down the road.
Yeah. So yes, before you get an agent, if you don't know much about the business, hire a writer's coach. It's nothing more than a week or two, and get their opinion of who you're thinking about pitching to. Spend a little bit of money there. It may be worth lots down the road. Diana, thank you. We will have another great episode next week. In the meantime, enjoy the holidays and the family.
Yes. Bye-bye.